TellyCast.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby, and welcome to another TellyCast. Branded content and brand-funded programming very much back on the agenda, as unscripted commissions from both PSBs and commercial broadcasters are starting to look a little bit thin on the ground. This week, I'm chatting with a leader in branded content and formats in Finland to find out how the market there is adapting. It's coming right up on this week's TellyCast. My guest this week is Lasse Nikkari, executive producer and head of formats and branded entertainment at Finland's Sanoma Media. Welcome to TellyCast, Lasse.
Thank you, Justin. Great to be here as a long-time listener of TellyCast.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Well, it's always great to have long-time listeners appear on the show. You've got an idea of the format, which is all good, and you're very adept at formats. I know that, Lasse, so we can talk a little bit about that a little bit later in the show. And it's fantastic to have another friend from Finland on TellyCast. And we've been far too UK focused recently.
I'm following footsteps of Ilkka, so
Yeah.
They're not bad footsteps to follow. He's a great guy.
Yeah, and I'm keen to open the show up and make sure there's many different companies and markets are represented as possible. So welcome again to the show. You're from Sanoma Media. Many people might not have heard of Sanoma Media. I hadn't really heard of them, but having researched them, they're Finland's biggest media group, right? Tell us a little bit about Sanoma.
Yeah, we are Finland's largest multimedia house. And of course, we have our total television, the television network, the television channels, our streaming platform Ruutu, but on top of that, we have news media, we have magazine media, we have our own radios, on-demand audio platform, digital media, and also events. And if that's not enough, we have our own record label as well,
Right.
with A-list artists. We are a quite significant player in the media industry of Finland. And from my findings, I guess VTM from Belgium is something close what we are.
Okay, yeah. So it's almost like a 360 modern day, next generation media business.
It is indeed.
And so tell us how your TV bit fits into Sanoma, really, and how you came to work for the company.
Well, the television is something, it's a cornerstone of Sanoma. Sanoma actually started off as a media company, and we had offices in Netherlands as well, and television channels in Netherlands as well. But now, in the past years, there's been a shift. Now we are 60% of learning company, and we are quite a significant learning company across Europe. But how the media side works is that we have the television channels and radio channels, and of course the on-demand platforms for both of those avenues. And of course, we try to build synergies. When we have a television show, we want that show, that big crown jewel of our entertainment slate, to be heard and seen in as many of our media platforms that we offer. And it is quite powerful.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're adopting like what many people are starting to call the octopus strategy, where you have IP right at the center of the business and then all the different parts of Sanoma can work with them. Does that work in practice as well as in theory?
Yeah, of course, we're a big company, so we are not necessarily always that agile, but in best case, it works like that. And I think the Voice of Finland is a great example of this, because we have the Voice of Finland. We've been doing that for years and years now. It's, I think, so far 12 seasons, so it's gone from strength to strength. A couple of years ago, we had one of the judges was a member of our record label, and of course, his songs were played on our radio channels. And then what I forgot to mention, we already also have events, live events on our portfolio. And then he was, of course, performing on one of our summer festivals. The most clever thing was that on that summer festival, we had something called the Voice of Finland container, where people could go in and experience Voice of Finland and sing karaoke, maybe get an invitation to the blind auditions. So then suddenly the show becomes something more than what you can experience on your home sofa.
Imagine it becomes very sponsorable and great for brands to communicate with young audiences. But we'll park that for a minute, because I know we're going to talk a little bit about branded content. But tell us about you then in your career today. How did you come to be working with Sanoma?
Well, I started off as a production assistant and I was aspiring to be a scripted editor. I came to the industry as an editor and I have edited quite big shows like The Survivor and Connected from Armosa, which was a groundbreaking show 10 years ago. But then I got in this idea and I got a little education to what is the format industry and what the business is. And as a opportunistic guy I am, I thought like, okay, those formats that I'm seeing coming from overseas, they're not that clever ideas. I can do better. So in that company I was working for as an editor, I started to pitch my own ideas and one thing led to another and I became head of development in that company. Then another world opened to me in television industry and television business. And then I started to create my own shows. I started to acquire formats to Finland. I started to pitch shows to Sanoma or Nelonen, which is the main channel, or the Nelonen Media, which is basically the media section of our company. And one of the shows was branded entertainment, and I really got interested in branded entertainment. And it was something that I've always liked marketing, and I've always liked brands, and I've followed certain brands, how they activate and how they inspire people. So that was something I got interested in, and I was able to produce or sell one of the branded entertainment shows in that position. And that was quite a successful show, and that kind of led me to this direction, that to become this kind of a branded entertainment ambassador, as I like to see myself.
And obviously, formats and brand funded programming and branded entertainment all sit very well together. Be interested in delving into that a little bit later in the show. Let's talk about Finland as a TV country or a media country, let's say. It's super advanced in terms of technology. Give us an idea of the media landscape, Lasse, when we look at Finland.
First of all, one could argue that we have too many linear channels still.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Because we have roughly 20 free-to-air channels available. Most of them are commercial. So it means that like there's always spot available if you want to advertise on television, which is not very good for price of advertising on television. That said, there is MTV, which is our biggest commercial broadcaster. Then there is us, the second largest commercial broadcaster. Then there is Warner Brothers Discovery, Fox or Stars, what it is now. And then there is, of course, all of the biggest, like MTV and us, have the main channel and the subsidiary channels, and of course their own AVOD, SVOD player. So that's kind of the landscape that we are. And we have a very strong public broadcaster, YLA, also, that is doing extremely great business. And of course, if you come from the commercial background, maybe too much entertainment for our favor, but they are great. So those are the main players of Finland, that the TV business and the broadcaster who are commissioning the shows.
That landscape sounds quite familiar to people in many territories. And you just touched on it there a little bit. Tell us about what the key issues are facing the TV and the content industry in Finland right now.
It's changing. I don't know whether it's because I'm with a broadcaster and I have window seat of looking of the environment we are trying to do this business, but it is changing, because it wasn't long ago when we heard the news that HBO Max is doing unscripted show for our territory. We heard the news about Prime coming with a big slate of Finnish unscripted shows to our territory. That was 12, 30 months ago. And now they've been with our territory, and apparently kind of, if the rumor has it right, they're kind of withdrawing from our territory, at least, or having a time off. So it is really changing. One thing is that we are very small, tiny territory. We have too many FTA channels, so the price of advertisement of Finland is way too low, lower than it is in Sweden or the rest of the Nordics. And then, of course, the digital transformation is happening here really quickly. The FTA audience is getting smaller and smaller every year. So what we've been as a Sanoma, we've been having for past 4 or 5 years this total television strategy happening, where we've been trying to commission shows with the same commissioning budget that works on both on FTA and on our streaming service Ruutu. And so that has kind of given character also to the choices what we made when we've done commissions. And we are trying to live by the findings that we've had from the past 4 years, meaning that we are doing less live shows, we're doing maybe less comedy panels, we are doing more competition reality. That seems to work really well on FTA and streaming platform.
It reminds me of the news last week. There's a fairly bleak outlook for Viaplay, who are obviously a really big player in the region. Rising cost of living, less streaming, less linear subscription sales, as well as higher churn.
Yes.
And ad sales are also expected to be down quite significantly, which has resulted in a change in the CEO there. There's a big unscripted slowdown as well that we've focused on that over the last couple of weeks on TellyCast. Are you seeing that in Finland as well?
Of course, the advertising revenues are down from what they used to be or what they were 12 months ago. So the outlook is not that positive. And of course, it's affected by the whole economic situation we have in Finland, and I guess in the rest of the Europe. The mortgage rates are up, inflation is really high. We've just survived the energy crisis over the winter when we had extremely high energy bills. These are affecting on customers' outlook of the future and how much money they spend on certain brands. And of course, we are a commercial broadcaster. If brands are not advertising as much as they did, it is hurting us. I know because we are a very small and agile team, running a streaming service, a viable streaming service, it's not easy. And I can say by just looking at how our route to service are nourished and cherished and tried to maintain viable. So it's not easy. So of course, Viaplay's news is it's not great for our industry, but I guess it's this kind of still aftershock of what happened to Netflix as well.
It seems to be a fairly universal theme, doesn't it? All of these issues, everybody's facing them all at the same time. We met originally at one of our regular TellyCast market meetups in Cannes, and I was really interested to hear about the successes you're having in branded entertainment. Tell us a little bit about the projects that you've been working on recently, and it'd be also interesting to know what the outlook for branded entertainment is with all of those things with ad slowdowns in mind and all the rest of it. Be interesting to know how that's going to affect the sector that you're focusing on, which is branded entertainment. But tell us about what you've been working on recently, first of all.
I'm not only taking care of our branded entertainment, I'm taking care of our formats as well. But that's quite natural combination as well, because what I try to do is I try to attach local brands with international formats, because that seems to be from our learnings from the past 3 years the way to success in this. And of course, it doesn't mean that we are not doing anything else. Those have been the best cases, and with best cases I mean with help of 3 different brands we were able to bring Love It All Listed to Finland, which was highly anticipated show because of the ready-mades, but it was always too expensive for weekday prime. So when we were able to find 3 great brands that actually made the show better, it became alive in Finland, and we were able to move to the production, and we've done 2 seasons of it, and they were great. Like the first season we were able to do it during the Corona. Of course, there was this massive boom for interior design and kind of redoing your house. So the timing was really great. So we had really great ratings and ended up winning Kultainen Venla, which is a Finnish counterpart of Emmy, as the best lifestyle show of the year, as a first branded entertainment show. We are now in the middle of 3rd season of All 3 Media's The Doghouse, which we are doing together with the brand. And not long ago, this spring, we had parliament election in Finland, and for the same time where they're happening, we were able to produce together with our local trade union of education the French format Facing the Classroom, which is great and timely format for that. So those probably being the crown jewels of branded entertainment and given us the best trainings. But we have done many different cases, from smaller docu-realities all the way to Love It All Listed, which is an established international format.
Have you found there's been a bit of pent-up demand when it comes to brands within Finland, and wanting to attach themselves to these sort of shows? And I guess you said ready-mades have done really well, so there's almost a proven audience for them already, right?
Yeah, but of course, when the brands are cutting down their marketing of course, the branded entertainment show and the influx of money towards that will decrease. Unfortunately, still, when you're facing a downturn or lower periods of time, the brand activation from the marketing gets the first cut, not necessarily the tactical advertisement.
On that point, actually, there's many different viewpoints on this, whether that is the right way for a brand to behave, because presumably, once advertising becomes lots cheaper and lots of other brands are holding back, isn't that the best time to actually go and solidify your brand and take advantage of that?
I really think so too. And there's a pile of surveys saying the same thing, that you should not forget your brand activation during the downturn, because when the times are shifting for the better, you are in the best possible position to gain the market share when the customers returns. But of course, it is always quite significant investment. So I'm kind of empathetic towards the brands as well. But that said, it would be really good time to do that, because that's a thing, you can always, with the sales activations and telling about your lowest prices, you gain success for the shorter period of time, and there's always the next one taking the price even further down. If you want to grow your brand sustainably, the brand activation is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Throughout the bad times as well.
Yeah, exactly. You've obviously been working in the brand entertainment area for, 2-3 years?
I've been with Nelonen and Sanoma Media Finland in this position for 3+ years. My first branded entertainment show that I got off the ground was, I think, 2016. That pushed me over the edge.
Right.
But ever since, I've been keeping my eyes open, all the opportunities, and it's been good. Good for the brands as well, who've engaged with us on these brand activation journeys that we've had.
And it sounds like there's plenty of channels there as well for you to place these sort of shows. This is a really growing area in Finland.
Well, I guess that was one of the initial reasons that I was hired, because our business-to-business sector started to get inquiries about these shows and these opportunities. Like I mentioned, it wasn't a new thing in Finland. There had been good cases before. I was guilty of one of them. But yeah, when we do brand that entertainment show at Sanoma, it's not only the show. We try to pull it off as a brand activation campaign, try to leverage our competitive advantage of being the largest multimedia house, meaning that at the heart of the campaign is the television show, but we also engage the client for business-to-business marketing campaign, which can then be more tactical than the show itself, because there's only so and so how much you can tell and have the brand messages across the shows. So then we're able to amplify those or make more tactical messages across our multiple media avenues we have.
I recently saw some news, I think you shared it on LinkedIn actually, that you've recently signed a deal to create Top Gear in Finland.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's a fruit of months and months of work. But that was one of the things that I got my eyes on as a branded entertainment show when I came to Sanoma, because it was, again, the case of that for long it was considered to be too expensive and do this and do that for our tiny industry. So my initial thought was if I'm able to attach brands before we commission the show and able to do the episode price down at least a little, maybe it becomes viable for Finland. But this is not a branded entertainment show. We do have commercial partners on the show. This is really fresh. We are only started the production. It's been a dream of ours for years now. And it's not only Top Gear, there's another massive show in the pipeline that we are able to announce soon. So in that terms, even though the market and the ad revenues are not very positive at the moment, but our program slate is better than ever,
right,
when it comes to fall and spring. And these big, massive, well-known hits like the Top Gear and the other one that I won't name are something also that we see will create competitive edge for our streaming service as well, because they are heritage formats. They are something that everybody knows. So they will help us with the churn and keep the clientele happy on our streaming platform.
Obviously, huge motorsport fan base as well within Finland, and a very rich history of rallying and Formula One drivers. Any clues on the hosts yet? Have they been announced yet? Anybody that we might know on a global level?
We do have the host announced. We have Teemu Selänne, which is all-star NHL ice hockey player. And then we have Ismo Leikola, this Hollywood-famed stand-up comedian. And then the third one is Christopher Strandberg, this multi-talented actor and a host in Finland. So I think we were able to pull that off really well. And from the first days of filming, we see they have clearly a great chemistry, and hopefully they become this dynamic trio that we hope for, and that we are able to have them for years and years now without Top Gear.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, congratulations on that, and fingers crossed for the TX of that. And that's obviously a deal you'll have done with Jan Salling from BBC BBC Studios Nordics. So he's a friend of...
Exactly. We've been working really close with Jan, and I've only good things to say about Jan, and we are super happy that it's finally come, because like I said, it's taken months and months of work, and I actually have a presentation from, I think it was July 2020, when I just started Nelonen, and I had this kind of like a list of shows that I would like to see us producing in the upcoming years, and of course Top Gear was one of them, and I already started conversation with Jan at the time.
Right.
So only 3 years, but now we finally have it, and we couldn't be happier.
And then finally, I suppose, you're showing enormous ambition with the size of the shows that you're producing in Finland. Are you very much still on the lookout for some of these major formats internationally that may have, we've seen huge breakout hits with The Traitors, for example, and lots of others. Are those the sort of shows that you're maybe targeting for Finland in the coming months and years ahead?
Well, that's the thing. Like, even we are a tiny country. The thing is, we have all the big established formats here. We are doing The Voice of Finland. We have The Traitors on our fall schedule already. We are super happy about that. We are bringing Shark Tank back for our fall schedule. We have done 2 seasons of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And by the looks of things, we are not going to give that away, but making a 3rd season. We have The Survivor, which actually is a great show, because when it was with our competitor roughly 10 years ago, I was an editor at Survivor. And since then, happened to be that the production company I was with as a head of development, I actually acquired the option for the Survivor, and that ended up to Nelonen, with whom I work now. So we've done 6 seasons of Survivor, and it goes from strength to strength. And it's nice to still have the Survivor around, because it's just such a dear format for me, and one of the best ones in the world. So we have all the big ones, basically. And of course, we do The Apprentice, and one of the most established and probably the successful formats we've had is The Best Singers from Netherlands. It's still like, we've produced 13 seasons now, and we are just in the middle of filming the 14th. So it's amazing. So we have already those big names. And what we don't have, our biggest competitor, MTV, has them, like The Masked Singer, Farmer Wants to Wife, Lego Masters. They are all there. So kind of like, I was positively surprised about the amount of great new formats there was at MTV. So of course we keep an eye on the fresh format market as well. But it's about finding the perfect balance between the well-known brands that is easier to probably sell and get across to your B2B sales teams who are making the commercial partnerships, and with the fresh new things like The Traitors. And it's good to keep in mind that Traitors is only known in Finland with the handful of people who work closely in the format business, who are looking out like what's the fresh format. If you just pick up a guy from the street and ask, do you know this format Traitors? They have no clue. But if you ask about the Top Gear, they will most certainly have an idea what's the show about.
And finally, on formats, Lasse, there's been a groundswell of interest around digital formats, and a lot of digital formats we're starting to see moving to linear. So shows that have been produced by independent studios and doing really well on social media networks, and then starting to build into linear. But also the idea of a lot of digital formats that are perhaps shot in UK or the US or whatever territory, in Germany, for example, them making the move to another territory in native language, so digital to digital formats as well. Are you seeing much in the way of digital formats happening in Finland?
There are a few, and we are actually in process of producing one digital format, but we always try to keep the option of putting them to linear if they become big enough. We don't want to kind of have that strict house rules upon them. We are a tiny industry, so of course it needs to be viable. We need to try to make business with our content and build this media environment where the brand partners then attach to themselves. So it's not that easy. For example, for us, like we do our commissioning from the same budget. So it's really, really hard to, from that small budget, to take away a lump sum of money. Okay, these are only digital, because the upside of those shows might be so small that it's not viable for us. But hopefully we will have change for better, because as one of the first countries in the world, we now have in place this measurement and monitoring with our Nielsen rating systems, our local Nielsen, that we are able to have this TRP communality across our FTA platforms and video platforms, meaning our streaming services. So hopefully that soon will get into the market and the market adopts this way. For a small country like us, the future of broadcasting will look a little bit brighter, because it makes no sense that people are watching the shows in so many ways. So the advertising is different priced if you watch it old-fashioned from the television, but if you connect with the show 2 hours later from the application, it's not the same. It makes no sense. And actually, if you go through the application, you need to make more active decisions as well. You need to pick up the right application. You need to pick up the right content. I think it should be more valuable, because the old-fashioned television, forgive me my French or the term, but it's still quite passive.
Yes.
Opposed to what it is on the streaming service. Hopefully there's a change for better and more change for more viable business, because it's really, really hard to be a commercial network in Finland. It's hard, but it's a nice challenge as well.
Now it's time for Story of the Week, the part of the show where my guests get to nominate the TV industry story that's caught their eye in the past 7 days. Lasse, what's your Story of the Week?
Well, I will be referring to K7's World Entertainment and Reality Report. Firstly, the K7 is a great service. I love the guys working in K7 and they do a great job. But in the report, there was a mention of new music format from Finland called Sounds of Finland. It had a nice feature in the report, and I used that as a segue to this momentum that the Finnish content seems to have nowadays. I hear a lot of ready-mades being commissioned overseas from the scripted Finnish programming. Rabbit Films, a great Finnish production company, just sold The Ultimate Escape to 7 networks in Australia. So it's a big thing for a tiny country like us to get an Australian version from our local IP. And that is after the Finnish format over the Atlantic has made faves in several countries. And of course, Netflix original, The Dance Brothers, first ever from Finland, got launched last month, and that's been produced by Endemol in Finland. So it seems to be that we are on the roll here, and hopefully we will be soon recognized as this tiny but ever so strong content territory, who we are, because it's been part of the show, but like Finland is the place where you get like Western European quality in terms of production and content ideas with Eastern European prices.
Well, that's what I was going to say, that because obviously we've spent a lot of the show talking about, world-class formats that are coming in and you need a certain standard of production to be able to replicate those and make those work for your local territory. But in terms of exporting original ideas, original IP and shows internationally, Finland's probably been a little bit slower than some other countries doing that, but you think there's a little bit of momentum underway now?
Hopefully. The small things, like, of course, there has been good news here and there. There has been like scripted shows have been localized before overseas, but hopefully this trend would shift into the unscripted territory. That would be fantastic.
And now it's time for Hero of the Week, Lasse. You know the score. You're a regular listener. You know what the Hero of the Week's all about. Who's your nomination for this week's Hero of the Week?
My hero of the week, or even better, the heroes of the week, are the people of Ukraine and all those who are providing help and support to Ukraine, all the reporters and journalists who are working in the war zone, ensuring accurate and truthful information. I am saddened because I'm still able to pick this up for this segment, but for me, there is no other choice. Us Finns, we share 1,300 kilometers of shared border with Russia and dramatic history with Russia. For someone who have done military service and is part of the reserve army, these dark times in Europe have come really close and personal. So I want to send a lot of sisu to stay strong and push back against Russia, as we did back in the days. And those who are not familiar, sisu is a Finnish concept of stoic determination, grit, bravery, and hardiness. Is kind of like our national character. So a lot of sisu to Ukrainians.
Well, what's it like having a border with Russia then, Lasse, over the last sort of 2 years? How has life changed for you?
As a travel destination, it's out of the play completely. And of course, it has taken a toll for Finnish business. There was a lot of business going on across border back in the days before the Ukrainian war started. So it has had serious influence on business side in Finland. And of course, it's unnecessary in a way, like there is still people alive, the veterans of what happened in the mid-20th century. So it's unnecessary for those to go through those dramatic memories and times and see it all over the news again. So not pleasant.
People of Ukraine, as you say, they're your heroes of the week. Yeah, after the week that they've had with that dam being mined or exploded or destroyed or whatever, and the consequences of that. Hopefully they can remain strong, and let's see how things develop. I think everybody will agree that there are a whole load of heroes in that country right now.
There are.
And Lasse, who or what are you telling to get in the bin this week?
Get in the bin this week. I must mention the news about the distress of Viaplay. Even though I'm all for all the companies finding their ways of doing viable business and be sustainable, but I'm all for to have good news about our industry. And I think there's enough distress in different countries at the moment. So hearing the news about Viaplay, not very good, and therefore they should go to the bin.
Yeah.
We should get more positive news.
More, well,
for
that's
our industry.
It. Okay, well, let's keep our fingers crossed for Viaplay and that they can get over this particular hump in the road. So let's put the news about Viaplay in the bin. Thank you so much for joining us on TellyCast. It's been great to meet somebody that we met in Cannes all those months ago, and actually finally have you back on the show and talking about the Finnish industry and brand-funded programming and formats that are happening within the Finnish industry as well. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you, Justin. Really appreciate it, and keep up the good work. I'm really enjoying your podcast. Thank you, Lasse. Well, that's about it for this week's show. As always, thanks a lot for listening. If you enjoyed it, please share it with friends and colleagues on social media. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in London. Next week's show comes from La Rochelle, France, from sunny side of the dock, where I'll be chatting with senior unscripted execs from around the world. Until then, stay safe,